The Seattle Seahawks and their fans need to be patient right now. What's going on, everybody? Good Monday morning. No, it's not. It's not a good Monday morning when you spent your Sunday watching your team get whipped by a wounded and desperate and not particularly good New York Giants team at home. Nothing good about that. But it's a day. We're awake. We're moving forward. We have a game on Thursday. We do not have time to get mentally wrapped up in this Giants game. Got to move forward. But before we get to the videos I'm going to put out this week, and we're going to have to put them out quickly because we're going to run out of time here very soon. Thursday is a quick turnaround, and I've got a lot of stuff to put out before our next game because once the next game gets here, people are not really going to care about the Giants game that much. But I want to talk a little generally about things right now with this team, and I want people to understand exactly what I'm trying to get across here. I want people to really try to grasp the direction of this team right now and comprehend the vision. And I want people to, how should I put this? I want people to understand our situation right now, because this is very different from previous years. This is very different from any season over the last, I'd say, 10 years. And I understand that people like to overreact. I understand that people, sometimes they're just doing it to have fun. Sometimes they're doing it to just be ironic. Sometimes they're doing it to troll. But I definitely caught a whiff of panic after yesterday, and it kind of makes sense, right? And I had some people tell me I was panicking in my video. I had a couple comments saying, hey, you're hitting the panic button. Sometimes I feel like I'm not really speaking English in these videos because people aren't picking up what I'm putting down. They're not following what I'm saying. What I was saying in that video yesterday was that we as a fan base, I felt like, had already crowned Mike Macdonald to be a good head coach. What I was saying was that after a game like that, I think that this is an opportunity for us to realize he hasn't done anything to earn credit for being a good head coach yet. So let's take that away and see what happens over these next couple years, because he has a 6-year deal. He's not going anywhere. I definitely do not think he's a bad coach, and I definitely don't think we can prove that this year. Being a good head coach in this league requires you to do something over and over and over again. Ben McAdoo made the playoffs, won 11 games his first year with the Giants, didn't make it through his second year because he was so bad. Bill Parcells, back in the late 70s, early 80s, won 3 games his first year as a head coach and almost got fired. They kept him, and he became one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. Giants won 2 Super Bowls over the next decade with him as head coach. And those 2 examples are just 2 of dozens, if not hundreds, of examples of coaches not being able to tell you what kind of coach they're going to be in that first year. So understand that I never said anything in that video that indicated I thought Macdonald was bad. All I was saying was that I had gotten the sense that the fan base and the pundits had already declared him to be good. And it was too early for that. And maybe if we had kept winning and kept winning and kept winning, and we'd gotten to the end of the year and we had like 12 wins or something, okay, maybe we would have just stayed on that gravy train the whole time and never really questioned it. But what I was saying is, after a game like yesterday, I think we need to just open our minds to the possibility that he's not a good coach, and that we need to open our minds when evaluating him. But of course, I'm not advocating for anything radical to happen here. He has a 6-year contract. We paid him a bunch of money to come here. There's so much promising stuff. The way he conducted things in the offseason looked good. The first 3 games, I was impressed with most of what I saw. The preseason, we saw promising things. Of course, I'm not advocating for us declaring that he's a bad coach. And People need to understand something here when it comes to Mike Macdonald. Number one is when you do this as a team, when you decide to hire a head coach that has never worked as a head coach before in the pros or college, and while we're at it, I don't believe he's worked as a head coach at any level, and you hire an offensive coordinator that has never worked in the NFL before, this is what you're signing up for. Maybe sometimes you get very lucky and you end up with the magical head coach or offensive coordinator who just instantly gets it. But you are signing up for games like yesterday sometimes. Realistically, you're going to have games like that because they're learning on the job. They don't really know what they're doing yet in this area. And you hired them knowing that. So you are signing up for this kind of journey. Now, it sucks that it costs you a game that you should absolutely win at home against an injured, not so good team. But that is part of the process. If you didn't want to be on this ride, you should have either kept Carroll, and by the way, that's no guarantee of success. The Giants no-showed plenty of games against weak competition at home over the Pete Carroll years, especially the last 4 or 5 years. Or you go hire somebody who's done it before, like Mike Vrabel, right? You could have done that. You could have gone after a Mike Vrabel. You could have gone after a Jim Harbaugh. You could have gone after someone who has had NFL success as a head coach before. Same with Ryan Grubb. If you didn't want to go through this, you could have gone after Frank Reich. He's been a successful OC in the NFL before. But you went this route. And the route can pay big-time dividends, but you can't be surprised when this happens. So, if you're on the ride, whether or not you liked the hires, whether or not you liked Macdonald, whether or not you liked Grubb, you still get on the ride. As a Seahawks fan, you have to. Because if you don't get on the ride, that means you're just not going to watch the games or follow the team. And you're just going to go to sleep until they hire somebody that you do like. But none of you did that. That's why you're watching this video right now. If you're watching this video right now, you didn't do that. So, this is the ride that we're on. Maybe it's not the ride you wanted to get on, but you did get on it. So, when you think about it like that, when you put it in those terms, I think that something like yesterday needs to be considered like collateral, where that game is going to happen every now and then. And while we're at it, let's remember, Mike Macdonald and Ryan Grubb didn't get to build this team. They got to build a little bit of it during the offseason, but I promise you, I guarantee you, that there's some stuff on this team that Macdonald and Grubb don't really want, because they were not here when this team was being built. Pete Carroll and John Schneider, with, to a certain extent, a guy like a Shane Waldron or a Clint Hurd or a Sean Desai, those guys were the guys who put together this roster. Those were the guys responsible for drafting most of the players on this team. Those were the guys who were responsible for making it work at that time. And you don't have the time or the resources in one offseason to just get rid of everything you don't want. Like, I personally suspect that there are multiple players on this defense that cannot do what Mike Macdonald wants them to do in his ideal defense. And they're not going to be here much longer, but he has to work with them for 1 year. So that's probably one of the things that is making this not work so great. And it's on Macdonald to figure out a way to make it work the best that he can while he can. But he was never going to come here and turn this defense into a top 5 unit overnight. So I want to be very adamant about this. If your reaction to yesterday's game is to fire this guy and cut that guy, just slow down, okay? I never called for that. I would never call for that in this situation. That would be a really, really bad idea. I mean, you know, I talked about Ben McAdoo and I talked about Bill Parcells at the start of this video, but let's look at some other coaches. Let's talk about some other guys. Like Andy Reid. Andy Reid is currently, of all the currently employed NFL head coaches, the most successful and quite possibly the best head coach in the business. What did he do his first year? 5-11. Now, he took over a 3-win team. That's kind of my point. It was a very incremental improvement. It was a slight bump up from the previous year. Eagles' offense was bad. 25th in the league out of 31 teams. So it didn't settle in immediately. You think Andy Reid loved everything that was in front of him when he showed up and took the job in Philly? Of course not. Next year, got the team to the playoffs. Next year, started a streak of 4 straight NFC title game appearances. What about Kyle Shanahan? How long did it take for Kyle Shanahan to find his footing? His first job as an OC in the NFL was in 2008 on the Houston Texans. 17th in the league in points. The next year, he was the OC again. They were 10th. Good. Okay, a little bit of improvement. But then that offseason, he moves on to Washington. Goes to a Washington team under his dad. 25th in points. 26th in points. So he's got the one good year in 2012 under Shanahan, under his dad. 4th in the league in points. That was the RG3 year, RG3's rookie year. But then the next year, back to reality, 23rd. And then he's out of there with his dad. And all 6 of those years, he's under guys who are running that offense, right? Mike Shanahan ran the Redskins offense in the early 2010s. Gary Kubiak ran the offense for the Texans in the late 00s. So it wasn't until Shanahan got to Cleveland in 2014 that he was really able to be in charge of an offense, and things went terribly. It was under Mike Pettin, who was a defensive-minded head coach. Offense was bad, no improvement over the previous year, and Shanahan was out of there. And then he goes to Atlanta in 2015, below average, 21st out of 32 teams, not good. It wasn't until 2016 that Kyle Shanahan found his success. And it was a big-time success, of course, and he got a head coaching job off of it. He got Matt Ryan his MVP. He got the Falcons to the Super Bowl. But look how long it took. Look how many opportunities he had to go through. Even if you don't count the Texans and Redskins, and you started at Cleveland, it took 2 bad years for him to actually get it all together. And even if you only count the Falcons, he still needed that first year. Again, do you think he showed up in Atlanta, looked around at the offensive roster, and was like, I love everything? Of course not. They had some talent. I mean, the 2015 Falcons, they had Matt Ryan. They had Julio Jones. They had good players. But there were some pieces here or there that he probably didn't like that much that he needed to purge and bring in stuff that he did like for them to get to what they were in 2016, where they were the #1 offense and made the Super Bowl. And Shanahan continues to actually be a really good example here. He goes to San Francisco the next year. Is it an instantaneous turnaround? No. 6 wins, 20th in points scored, below average offense. 2018, even worse. It took year 3 for Shanahan to actually start producing good results. And these are some of the best coaches in the business right now that I'm talking about. Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan. Yeah, sometimes you get Sean McVay. But guess what? Sean McVay, that first year, they won the division, made the playoffs. They were one and done. He didn't just roll out of bed and go to the Super Bowl. He didn't roll out of bed and win the NFC. It took time. So, by the way, us winning the division and making the playoffs is still very much on the table here. So, it's not like we're already ignoring the possibility of that happening. So, I just had to make this video because I see some panic. I see some worry. And I think that we need to be open-minded about the possibility that we did make the wrong hires. And we need to be open to consider that over the next couple years. But understand, guys, this is the journey we're on right now. It is going to take years before we figure this out. Short of the Seahawks going like 3-14 this year. If we lose out, okay, different conversation. But short of that, we are on this train, and getting off of it right now would be a very big mistake. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks.